Chapter 4 covers the tasks and concepts that we use the most on a regular day-to-day basis. I'm talking about files and directories. Whenever we use the Unix shell, we are forever opening, editing, moving, deleting, viewing, and looking for files and directories. By the time this chapter is over, hopefully you'll be quite comfortable with all aspects of doing exactly that. We'll start with a brief conceptual discussion. This is for those people that have either not used many computer systems before, or have but aren't particularly sure what a file or a directory is. In this module, I will explain the concepts surrounding those two terms, files and directories, and I'll show you some simple programs that you can use to navigate your way around directories and examine the files therein. We'll start with the notion of a file. All the data that you have stored on your Unix system, and indeed any other system, is stored in a file. And a file is really nothing more than that. It is a little box in which you put data. It's some kind of data store. That data could be a program, it could be a document, it could be a database, it could be, well, just about any sort of information that you could store on a computer. Typically you would have, quite literally, thousands of files on any given Unix system. In order to better organize these thousands of files, they have been arranged into what we call directories. If you're familiar with a Windows-based system such as Windows 95 or Windows 2000, you would call directories folders. That the names are used interchangeably because they mean exactly the same thing. If you're not familiar with directories and files, it is useful to think of a file system, or if you like an entire computer, as a tree of data. Without too much of a stretch of the imagination, you can perceive a tree to be hierarchically organized. It starts with a great big branch or root, and then slowly branches into smaller branches, which in turn have smaller branches and smaller branches all the way down to twigs. It's hierarchical because each branch contains a number of smaller branches, and each one of those smaller branches is part of only one larger branch. We think of these branches as our directories. And those directories can contain, as well as containing other branches, they can also contain files. And we think of the files as the leaves. The only place in which the tree analogy breaks down is that leaves can be found on all levels of the tree. You can find leaves even in the root, or if you like, the trunk of the tree. So we say that a file is in a directory, in the same way that we say a leaf is on a particular branch. The top of the tree is called the root directory, so it's all a little bit upside down. Take this picture that you've got of a tree in your head and turn it upside down. Imagine the tree growing down from the sky, or hanging from the ceiling, or whatever you like. And we call the top of the tree the root directory. The word root did in fact come from the tree analogy. The tree doesn't have to be upside down, but most diagrams that you find surrounding the hierarchical file systems of Unix or any other operating system, you'll find them drawn with the root at the top. The root directory has an actual file name, or directory name if you like. It's just the / where we just call it slash. We have a particular nomenclature for addressing each particular branch and leaf on the tree. In other words, each directory and file has its own particular name, and these names are created by combining the name of the file or directory that you're trying to name, combining that with the names of all the branches that lead to that particular file. We separate each by a slash. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, have a look at this example. We have a leaf or a file called sales.txt. That leaf is on a branch called reports, and that branch is on a larger branch called documents, and that branch is on a larger branch called Tom, and that branch is on a great big branch called USR or user, and that branch is on the root, the / at the beginning. Notice that we use the / to separate the names of each of the branches and the files. Now, if that doesn't still make sense to you, then let's have a look at a diagram which hopefully will. This diagram, with a little stretch of the imagination, is a diagram of a tree. The black lines between all the boxes can be thought of as the branches, and the boxes themselves are simply the names of the branches. When you get down to the blue and green boxes at the bottom, they represent files, so they in fact are the leaves on that particular branch, on the reports branch, whereas all the other boxes on the tree are intended to represent directories. So, for example, starting with the root of the tree, we find that we have 4 main branches: bin, usr, tump, and etc, etc. Now we're going to ignore the contents of the bin, tump, and etc branches and focus just on usr. We find that that has 3 smaller branches on it: John, Tom, and Sue. And then we're just going to focus on Tom and ignore the other 2. Tom has 2 smaller branches, or if you like, 2 subdirectories. Underneath the Tom directory you'll find 2 subdirectories: documents and email. Underneath documents you'll find again 2 subdirectories inside that. You may in fact find a bunch of files in there as well, but we're not going to look at those files at the moment. They're not part of this diagram. The only files that we're going to look at are the files contained in the reports directory, which is inside the documents directory. There are 4 files inside the reports directory, so in other words there are 4 leaves on that particular branch of the tree. And the one that's marked in green, sales.txt, is the one from the previous example. I'll just flip back to that slide so you can have a look at it again. There it is, /user/tom/documents/sales.txt. Again, /user/tom/documents/reports/sales.txt. And that's the way it is with all files and directories in the Unix system. Notice that there is no C drive. It's just the /. There's no C:\\, there's no D:\\. If you're wondering why that is or how that works, stay tuned. In a later chapter we will be discussing the various disks and floppy disks and so forth that you can have in a Unix system. We call them file systems.